Okay, well, let's get started. Seems like we have a significant amount of people that have already joined the call. So I will just do a couple housekeeping items, and then we'll go to Georgia so they can give their report, and then we'll go allow Cure SMA to do their presentation. Does that sound okay with everybody? Okay. So, well, I thought everybody was muted upon entry, but that's not the case. So I just ask people that if you're not speaking, to please mute your lines. If you have any questions, you can enter things into the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question after the presentation is over. Um, this presentation is being recorded, and it will be posted to the NBSTRN YouTube site after the meeting is over. And there's a link below, and we'll send that link out through our listserv. And then just a quick announcement. NBSTRN is hosting a newborn screening virtual summit on between September 8th and 10th from 12 to 3 p.m. If we have a little bit more time at the end of the meeting, we'll go into a little bit more detail. But if not, please visit our website, www.nbstrn.org, to find out more information. So I'm going to skip down to Georgia, and I will go ahead and get the follow-up from Dr. Wilcox on the pilot study update.
So the SMA pilot ended a while ago, so that formal report is done. It went immediately from the pilot to the live screening, so there was no break whatsoever. Of the prior pilots that we did, X-linked ALD has come up finally, and we're screening for it the last couple of months, and already had a positive that I think was a Zellweger. And the Pompeii MPS1 is still waiting to come up. We're hoping by the end of the year. COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench in the gears of the state's machinery. And the proximal urea cycle, one that we're in the midst of, is currently on hold. We had been using, the way that we're doing this is looking at low citrulline using clear tools to assign a risk, and those that are at higher risk for having a disorder like ornithine transcarbamylase would then get pulled in for testing. And we have about 140,000 births a year in the state, and we were getting at least one a week, all false positives. And then COVID hit, and we decided this is ridiculous. We can't have all these little babies that don't have anything coming into the emergency rooms to get their blood drawn for ammonias. I mean, they got to go someplace where they can run an ammonia quick. We had been running the newborn screening with Neobase 1, which doesn't have glutamine in it. And so we waited for Neobase 2 to come up, which does have glutamine in it and should allow us to pick up more positives that without all of the false positives. And we ran into a problem. And the problem is this, that the peak for glutamine is the same as the peak for lysine on Neobase 2. So all of the clear tools that had existed that would use glutamine results don't work with the Neobase 2 panel. So we've had to ask California, and they have been kind to be pulling samples for positive cases that we can then test with Neobase 2, because there aren't enough cases in the database to adjust the clear tool yet. So we got to have known cases. There's plenty of other kids, but not kids with confirmed proximal urea cycle disorder. So that's in the process of happening. As soon as that gets done and they're able to adjust the clear tool, so Tricia Hall here is working very closely with Dieter and Piero at Mayo to update the clear tools that'll work with Neobase 2. If we can get the the estimated false positive rate down, then we will get going again. So hopefully that's going to happen before the end of the year, that we'll be able to resume, and then we'll see what happens. So that's the status of things now.
One question, Dr. Wilcox, you said the peak for glutamine is the same as what?
Lysine.
Lysine, okay.
They migrate, unfortunately, together in the mass spec, so you can't tell them apart. License LYS. That's the
sorry.
short name.
I'm sorry. I hate typing on the fly.
See, it's not as easy as it looks, right?
It's not. It's not. Okay. Does anybody on the call have any questions for Dr. Wilcox?
Bill and Angela, are you guys working on a SMA publication for the pilot, or?
Yeah, that's the next step.
No pressure.
We got the X-linked ALD that's about ready to go in. The Pompe and NBS one is already published, and so SMA will be the next thing on the list. We just had to respond to an RFP for the NIH for the next screening, so we've been kind of busy ourselves.
Gotcha.
Well, and this is Melissa.
It's on our list to do.
This is Melissa Parisi from NIH, and I just want to thank you for all your efforts, Bill. I know you've been working hard to try to do these pilots, and the proximal urea cycle disorders. I mean, who would have thought these would be the complications? But that's why we need to do the pilot test. So you figure out what all the kinks are in the system before there's large-scale rollout, and people find that maybe we needed to do some adjustments or modify our protocols. So we appreciate what you're doing.
This is great. Yeah, no, this has been all of these have provided a learning experience for us that we hope will be useful for others. And we know it takes time to get stuff written up and published, and that's why we're trying to present things publicly long before then as to what the problems are. So if anybody's planning on bringing up Pompe NPS 1 X-linked ALD or SMA, we can tell you, fortunately, the X-linked ALD and the SMA go really well without lots of problems, at least the way we're doing it.
Yeah, where I previously worked, whenever we rolled out a new process, we always said, we guarantee it's wrong or your money back. Because it's always the case. And so this is really classic quality improvement and virtuous cycle where the implementation comes with data collection and iterative improvement. So this is excellent work, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Wilcox, for your update. So what we're going to do now is transition to the featured presentation, and if we have time, we'll come back and we'll get updates from the other pilot studies that we've been getting updates from. So I'm going to... Here we go. So let me just introduce our featured presentation, which is Cure SMA and Spinal Muscular Atrophy Newborn Screening. We'll be hearing from two speakers, Dr. Mary Schroet. She's the Chief Medical Officer at Cure SMA. She's also a pediatric pulmonologist and Professor Emeritus of Pediatrics at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. And we'll also be hearing from Abigail Paris. I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. And she is the Clinical Care Program Manager for Cure SMA. I just also want to highlight that Dr. Schroet did a Q&A with one of our other staff members, which is posted on our NBS website. So I will hand it over to you, Dr. Schroet, to go ahead and share your screen.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to be able to present to this group, and thank you so much for the invitation. Abby, I think, is going to be putting up slides.
Yeah, if you don't mind maybe unsharing your screen, because it's telling me I can't share with someone sharing. There we go.
So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just talking about SMA and some of the clinical features. I'm primarily a clinician, and we're working diligently with our community and with all of you to get SMA implemented across the U.S. for newborn screening. Next slide, Abby. So first of all, Cure SMA is the largest patient advocacy group supporting individuals with spinal muscular atrophy. We fund and direct research that drives breakthroughs in treatment and care. We support families who are living with SMA. We have 36 chapters around the country that are volunteer-led, and they are the face of our organization on the ground. We maintain a Cure SMA member database, which has over 8,600 individuals with SMA. And we also have 120,000 families and supporters. And please check out our website at curesma.org. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about what is SMA, and I'm just going to do the highlights because you all are very familiar. Next slide. So spinal muscular atrophy is a neuromuscular disorder. It's a disease of the motor neurons. It affects the anterior horn cells, and it is a deficiency of the survival motor neuron protein. It's degenerative. Our individuals with SMA report fatigue as well as the muscle weakness. So they can, they're good. They're great in the morning, but then by midday, they're just very fatigued and struggle to get through the rest of their day often. SMA affects multiple organ systems in addition to the musculoskeletal, which is readily apparent. They have breathing difficulties with respiratory muscle weakness. They have difficulty swallowing, GI and nutrition issues, and also have bone health issues. The bones often, for those individuals who don't sit, they don't have the pressure on the bones to get stronger, and so they often have thin bones. And the typical cause of death is respiratory failure, which is how I, as a pediatric pulmonologist, got very involved in this disorder. Next slide. The genetics of SMA is that it's autosomal recessive. So for every set of parents who are both carriers, there's a 1 in 4 chance for each pregnancy to have a baby with SMA. The historical incidence is 1 in 11,000 live births, but all of you are going to help us figure out what the true incidence is now with all the work that you're doing with newborn screening. Diagnosis is by gene mutation testing for the SMN1 gene homozygous deletion. The deletion is on chromosome 5q and typically affects exon 7 and or 8. There may also be a gene conversion of SMN1 to SMN2-like gene. And also, I want to always remind the clinicians out there that newborn screening is wonderful. It will get us treatment to babies much sooner, but there are still 5% who will not be picked up by newborn screening because they have a point mutation. SMA is still the most common lethal genetic disease of children under 2. It's changing though. It's changing rapidly. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide. So this is the SMA gene. It's SMN1 and SMN2. You all are way more knowledgeable about this. I am primarily a clinician. For people who do not have SMA, the SMN1 is complete. If you only have one SMN1 intact gene, you get adequate amounts of the survival motor neuron protein that you do not have symptoms. And next slide. And the change that we see in SMA is that SMN1 is homozygously deleted, so it's not making any protein. And there's a backup gene. I think of it as the backup gene, the SMN2, which has 1 base pair change compared to SMN1. And it produces 10% of functional protein, and 90% is degraded very quickly and very unstable. So again, this is a disease of survival motor neuron protein deficiency. Next slide. This is the pre-genetic modifying therapy clinical classification of SMA. So there are 5 types. There are 3 predominant types that are much more common. And types are based on age of symptom onset and maximum motor function achieved. And this is all pre-treatment. So without treatment, what we saw is that there was a very small population of babies who were born with SMA symptoms. They had respiratory distress at birth. They often required intubation, to be ventilated, and were in intensive care units immediately after birth. Those babies typically had 1 or 2 copies of SMN2, that backup gene, and they typically did not survive very long. The most common form of SMA is SMA type 1. Symptoms typically appear prior to 6 months of age, and these babies lose 90% of their motor neurons prior to 6 months of age. So significant rapid loss prior to hitting 6 months. They never sit. They typically have 2 copies of SMN2, but may have as little as 1 or may have 3. And if you don't do any of the respiratory support, nutrition support, don't have treatments, they will all pass away before 2 years of age typically. Natural history studies have shown typically that they will survive on average to 13 months. SMA type 2, these are stronger. They typically develop symptoms at 6 to 18 months of age. They will sit and they may stand. They have 3 copies of the SMN2. SMN2 is a disease modifier. There are exceptions. It's not perfect. Types don't perfectly align with number of copies, but there is some generalization there. Type 3s typically achieve the ability to walk. They present at the time where children typically are walking or expected to walk, but may present later or be recognized later. They have a normal life expectancy. There's also another rare form, SMA type 4, which is an adult onset form. They have a normal development, but in adulthood, they will develop myalgias, just pain, muscle pain, and discomfort, and have progressive atrophy of their muscles. They typically don't lose the ability to walk, but they are weaker. And they may have 4 to 5 copies of SMN2. So the genetics are fairly simple, really, for SMA, but the disease spectrum is quite wide-ranging. Next slide. So this are some videos just showing you some of the clinical features of SMA, and Abby's going to make them work. The first one just shows, this is how babies typically are laying when they have SMA. They lay on their back. They may move their arms. They have proximal muscle weakness, so they'll raise their forearm against gravity, but they won't lift the shoulder. They typically also have rapid belly breathing because the intercostal muscles don't work, so they look like belly breathers. In the next slide, shows just the typical position of the frog legs, and even with some stimulation of the foot, the baby's not able to extend the leg. They may be able to move the foot. And then the third one, so the fooler, why it seems that these babies have a significant diagnostic odyssey or diagnostic delay based on symptoms is that they're alert, they're socially engaging, they're bright-eyed, in contrast to the hypotonia that they have. So sometimes they've been called lazy babies while they're being monitored and trying to sort out what their diagnosis may be. Okay, next slide. So as of 2016, individuals with SMA had the first FDA-approved treatment. So Spinraza is the first treatment that was approved. This is an SMN2 splicing modifier. It is delivered intrathecally. There are 4 loading doses given over 2 months, and then maintenance is every 4 months. And this Spinraza is approved for all ages, all types of SMA. The second drug that was approved was Zolgensma, which is a gene replacement therapy. The SMN, a small segment of DNA, the SMN1 gene, is delivered via an AAV9 vector intravenously, and it is approved for children under the age of 2 years. So this is a one-time IV infusion. And the third drug that was just approved is Evrysdi or Risdiplam. This is also an SMN2 gene splicing modifier. It is taken orally or by G-tube every day. and it is approved for kids over 2 months of age. So for newborn screen babies, there are 2 options to treat them. There's the gene replacement therapy, Zolgensma, and the SMN2 gene modifying treatment, Spinraza. Next slide. And with treatment, that facilitated the ability to get SMA added to the RUSP. Jill Jarecki, the Chief Scientific Officer at Cure SMA, led a collaboration to submit SMA to the RUSP. Our first submission in 2008 was rejected because there was no state pilot and no approved drug. But then in February 2017, it was resubmitted with additional data related to the clinical trials of Spinraza. It went through condition review in May of 2017 and voted favorably by the committee in February of 2018. Meanwhile, Utah had implemented permanent screening for SMA in January of 2018. And then in July of 2018, the Secretary of HHS signed SMA at the federal level, recommended to be added to the panel. Next slide. So we've had gene modifying therapies available for 3.5, almost 4 years now. And what we're seeing in the population is that dramatic changes. And with newborn screening, typing, SMA type is becoming irrelevant. It is not a good way to describe patients anymore. So what we're seeing is that patients are being described based on motor function, highest motor function achieved. Are they a non-sitter, a sitter standard, or a walker? And their SMN2 copy number. And so we're seeing a shift in the disease and in our population. And I just want to remind everyone that SMA is a clinical emergency as a diagnosis. So newborn screens positive for SMA, it should be an urgent, emergent referral to a treatment center that can make recommendations, advise, and treat these infants. Time is neurons. All the clinical trials in the treatments that have been approved have demonstrated that the earlier you treat, the better the outcome. So, and if you ask me a question about which drug, it doesn't matter. Regardless of the treatment, the earlier you treat, the better the outcome. Next slide. I also wanted just to comment that, with our drug pipeline, so we have 3 drugs that are available for treatment of various ages of SMA, but know that none of these treatments are cures. They're treatments. And you saw our drug pipeline, it didn't point it out, but we have many other, there you go, thank you, Abby, many other programs that are in drug development. I believe there's 20 additional programs. So there's additional targets that are being looked at. We have muscle targets, and we provide grant funding to explore additional new targets to make this disease better. We're still looking for that cure. We don't have it yet. Okay, I'm now going to turn the program over to Abby, who will continue to talk more about.
Great. Thank you, Mary. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an update on SMA newborn screening across the country. So we're really excited that just last month we reached 32 states currently screening for SMA. 5 of those states are in pilots and 27 are permanently screening. This takes us to 68% of all newborn babies in the United States being screened for SMA. And this is just a great effort on the state's parts, and we really thank you all for all of your hard work in getting the pilots up and running and your states up and running. And know that we're always here to support through advocacy, education programs, family support programs. Really, any way that we can support more states coming on is really what we are looking to do. And this shows, again, that effort of more states coming on throughout the last few years, starting with Utah in 2018, in Q1 of 2018. And we can see here the number of states screening over time and the number of the percentage of births screening over time. So like I said on the last slide, we're at about 68% of infants in the United States being screened for SMA. And this is based on 2018 CDC birth rate per state. So this is really a predictive model, not necessarily real life numbers, but a good estimate of where we are based on that 2018 birth rate. And this, in contrast to the last slide, is our real data that we're collecting. And Mary mentioned this earlier, that this is really a collaboration with all the states that are currently screening, and data that has been shared with us regarding how many screens have actually happened and how many positives have come out of those screens. And this is super helpful for us to help to estimate that real life incidence. As Mary mentioned, historically we've used 1 in 11,000, and here we can see there's a big range based on those numbers in red, from about 4,000 to 5,000 to 20,000 plus. So we're really interested in continuing to collect this data as more states come on and as more states are able to share this information with us, to really provide the most up-to-date information to the community that we can, and also help our families in the best way possible. So another column here that you'll see is families who contacted Cure SMA. We do not reach out to families. We don't receive personal information about these families from the states, but we do ask the states and their referral centers to help us by giving families our information. And then those families contact us for support and educational materials and our family support programming, and really that sense of community that is so important when you talk about a rare disease. And something that we're really excited about related to newborn screening is that of the infants that we know of being identified through newborn screening, we've had at least 80% contact us. So we're really looking all the time to continue to increase that number, and really have every affected family contact us so that we can get them the resources that they need and the support that they deserve. So this just continues on that data from the page before, and points out that 68% of babies in the United States being screened. Of the 32 states that are currently screening, we have received data from 17. So this tells us that number represents about 40% of United States newborns, again, based on that 2018 CDC birth rate. We've had 102 positives in that sample, and like I stated, about 80%, 78 of the families have contacted us. And this small sample shows us that our estimated incidence is about 1 in 15,000. So it is really interesting just to see how that number might continue to change, and as we collect more information over time. And we're really happy to share all of this information with all of you, and we just really look to the labs and the states to help us continue to update this information and fill it out more, again, so that we can have the best information for our families and our research team and everyone that's interested, and make sure that we can provide those support programs where they're needed. So now I'll kind of just go in a little bit to what some of our resources and support programs look like, both for families and healthcare providers working with families. So like I mentioned before, we really encourage all families that receive a diagnosis for SMA to contact Cure SMA, and we ask our referral centers and partners to help by giving our families information, their families information about Cure SMA, When they do contact us for the first time, we send them an info pack that contains everything that you see here on the screen. A welcome letter that welcomes them to the community and gives them information about Cure SMA and their local chapter. Copies of our Care Series booklets, which we'll share a little bit more about, but they're available in both English and Spanish, and they cover multidisciplinary care for SMA. So everything from just the basics, understanding SMA, to nutrition, genetics, musculoskeletal care, and more. We also include copies of our Compass, which is our research publication, Directions, which is our community update, information on our annual conference, which every year happens in June. This year it was virtual. We're really hoping that we'll be able to do it in 2021 in Austin, like you can see on the screen. And something that we do have for newly diagnosed families is the opportunity to receive a scholarship, so they can attend the conference completely free of charge, and it allows them to, again, develop that sense of community and connection with people that have the same, that are in the same situation as them, really grow that community through the conference. And then we also include other information about the drug pipeline, clinical trials, really anything else that's going on in the SMA community. So recently approved therapies and updates within Care SMA will be included as well. Every family that contacts us for the first time also receives a care package, and we make sure that all of the care packages are both age and ability level appropriate. So these are just some examples of what families might receive if they had a newborn identified through newborn screening. It has it includes our Care Series booklets, a whole booklet of materials, but then also toys and equipment, and gives parents and families ideas of things that they can use, their babies can use safely and have fun with and play with, and it's really just fun. Along with that, we also have our equipment pool. These are just some examples of some things that are included in our equipment pool. Car seats, car beds, wagons we also have, and this is an opportunity for families to access equipment that they may not be able to access otherwise. I'm not sure if I mentioned, but all of this equipment, the care packages and everything are available completely free of cost to the families. So this is a way that they don't have to worry about paying for this equipment. If we have it, they can borrow it. Another resource that we've developed for our families in light of the COVID-19 pandemic is a COVID-19 resource page. We've been able to provide support packages and small amounts of financial assistance to our families, and those support packages include additional materials to make staying home in isolation a little bit easier, like coloring books and activities like that, and then also hand sanitizer, wipes, different kinds of sanitation materials, and those are available to anyone that contacts us within our community. And then we've also put out a number of webinars, both for community members and for healthcare providers, related to what our recommendations are for SMA in light of the pandemic. And then we do have a survey that we invited our community members to fill out regarding their experience with COVID-19 as a person with SMA or a family member of a person with SMA. And these are all available on our website. It actually pops up right from our homepage. There's also a number of prepared letters to share with employers, schools, healthcare providers, and also for healthcare providers to share with their administrators and with families, just to kind of explain the added complexity of risks associated with contracting COVID-19 as a patient living with SMA. Then, like I mentioned before, we've also developed a number of educational materials in the form of our Care Series booklets, and we do also have 2 booklets specifically related to newborn screening. As I mentioned, all of these booklets are available on our website in both English and Spanish. I also have PDFs of all of them, and I'm more than happy to share them via email if that's better. But you can also download the PDF on the website. And these booklets, the newborn screening booklets, we have one for families. That's just kind of what to know, what to do, and what to expect when you first receive a positive screen for SMA. Similarly, we have a book for healthcare providers about receiving a positive screen for SMA, and that's specifically targeted towards primary care physicians, but it's useful, and we hope that we're able to send it to referral centers, all of the referral centers that are getting screens for SMA. And like I mentioned, we also have our Care Series booklets, and those are targeted towards both families and healthcare providers. They're really just a broad overview of all areas of SMA and multidisciplinary care for SMA. Another resource we have for families and providers is a patient care dedicated email address. We always encourage healthcare providers and families to contact us via that address with any questions related to their care or the care of their patients. And Mary and I triage those emails and make sure we get them the appropriate resources. We also have a medical advisory committee that consists of right now 30 experts in SMA care throughout all disciplines. So it's a great resource that we have, and we're able to connect providers with them if they have a specific question about care for us patients with SMA. Separately from newborn screening, we have another program, an awareness campaign called Smart Moves, and this was built out of the need to bridge the gap in diagnostic delays until newborn screening is fully implemented across the country. It really is an awareness campaign about those diagnostic delays and early recognition of symptoms. Those videos that Mary showed earlier come from the Smart Moves website. And the website is awesome. It includes a ton of materials for both healthcare providers and parents, including those videos, also a toolkit, just quick signs and things to look out for on that one-page quick reference guide. And for providers, there are also 2 CME activities linked on that page. And I just wanted to mention that we also do have other CME activities on our website, programs that Mary and I have worked on over the last year. And those are available, again, free of cost for providers. And all of those other materials are available for anyone to access at any time. Okay, so next I'll jump kind of into our newborn screening portal and database, which is another part of our clinical care initiative with Cure SMA. We're really in a data collecting stage to find out as much as we can about what this SMA patient population looks like as the phenotype changes. And one of those things is surveying families with newborn screening identified children with SMA. And the way that they do this is simply by logging on to the newborn screening portal, which the link is listed here. And they can either provide information by answering the survey questions, or they can consent for their healthcare provider to provide information on their behalf. And along with that, we've also developed our Care Center Network and Clinical Data Registry, which right now we have centers across the country that are multidisciplinary care centers that are providing care for patients with SMA. You can see on this map the pink pins provide care for pediatric patients only. The blue pins provide adult care, and the orange pins provide care for both pediatrics and adults. And we work with these sites to collect data through our clinical data registry. They push data from consented patients directly from their EMR to our clinical data registry. And in developing this, we're really working on getting a cross-section of data that includes both large metropolitan areas, small cities, larger hospitals and smaller hospitals, and to really look at that data and see, learn more about the population and ultimately develop an evidence-based standard of care for SMA, just kind of wrapping up everything that we talked about with collecting more information and learning more about this population. I feel like I just talked really fast, but I've also included all of our contact information and the contact information for our Vice President of Policy and Advocacy on this page. We really want to have as much of a collaborative relationship as possible so that we can continue to collect this information and share data and information, as well as all of our educational materials. So if there's any way we can ever support bringing on a new pilot or moving from pilot to implementation, we're more than happy to work together and see how we can support you.
Thank you. So in this slide is all of our contact information. So we're happy to take questions.
Thank you guys for that wonderful presentation. There's a lot of chatter already in our chat box here with lots of questions about the presentation. There was a significant amount of questions about the incidence table that you just
Yep.
Gabrielle. Yes.
Happy.
So,
happy go back to that.
Yeah. Can you just explain a little bit more on how you came up with this table, and if there's any conclusions you guys came to why New York's numbers seem to be, their incidence is, much, I guess, lower than the other states that are reported on this table.
So we're just going to walk you through this table. So these are the states that are permanently screening on this slide. The second slide was states that are in pilots. And so it's permanent screening start day is the first column, and then the reporting period. So we're also collecting, if you are sending us information about number of babies screened, we're asking you to also tell us during what period of time is that represented. And then number screened, we're also recording number positive that you report to us. And then we're doing a very simple calculation of number positive divided by the number screened to come up with that incidence. So some of the states have been doing screening for more than a year. Some states, it's partial year information. We're capturing everything that we have, and our desire is to share it back to you and to make this as robust as we can. Regarding New York, I mean, we've had conversations with the medical team at Columbia too about this, and it was also mentioned in the chat. There is very high awareness about carrier screening in New York State, it seems. So one of the possible etiologies is, or most likely, is that carrier screening is happening at the prenatal, before people are making reproductive decisions. It's also occurring while our women are pregnant, and they may choose to terminate pregnancy, and we do not have a way to track that. So that may be part of it. In addition, I saw in the chat that there's questions about just errors in collection, and of course that's always an issue. And this is still relatively, New York has. So, and then and then the next column is families who contacted Cure SMA. So we don't reach out to families; they contact us. But we're asking state labs to, provide our website to the primary care providers when you do your reporting. We're also reaching out to the referral centers and providing them with information about Cure SMA so that they can provide that to families, and families can choose to reach out to us. So just know that we have no PHI identifiable information that comes to us. All we have are numbers. That's it. And it's up to others to refer families, or for families to find us online as well. And then we included the birth rate, and then we did an estimated percent of U.S. infants screened for each state. So for example, Arkansas represents 1% of all babies in the US based on the 2018 birth rate. And our numbers, our total numbers for screening represent 40% of infants in the US. But as Abby pointed out, we only have 17 of the 32 states, and we invite you to contact us. If we haven't reached out to you, please email one of us or contact us, and just because we very much want to be able to, as Abby said, support our community and learn more so that we can advocate better. I had a conversation with Dr. Wilcox earlier, who was just talking about the challenge of access to the treatments from a payers are challenging, and we use the information that we collect to advocate to the payers directly to say, hey, please provide the access up to the FDA label, and really encouraging and supporting that and providing as much information as data as we can to help payers make decisions that optimize access for this very rare population. Other questions? Sorry, that was a very, very long
answer. There's several more questions. There was another question about, is there any difference in incidence based on race and ethnicity?
So we haven't looked at that data, and I don't think we have it. We would have that potentially in the families who contact us. We would not have that information from the states.
And there is one that says there's a typo for Arkansas. The same period, it says 323.
Oh, it says 3030.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you.
Pointing out the typo. Next question is, how do you all propose to address the high challenge to get SMA specialty treatment centers in all states, since we presumably want SMA screening across all states? It would be hard for families to get treatment if they can't access it.
No, you're absolutely right. And that is one of my goals with at Cure SMA, is to disseminate as much information to support those care centers. I mean, as Abby mentioned, we also have we have the 19 care centers across the U.S. We're collecting data about patients. Our goal is to create an evidence-based standard of care and push that out to everyone who's delivering care to individuals with SMA. You know, it's multifold. One is making information available and supporting clinicians, and the other is clinicians who want to get involved. So we're here. We don't know everybody in every state. We know the key opinion leaders and the clinicians who are most vocal about SMA and those that are doing research. But we may not know who the smaller community folks are unless they contact us and say, hey, we're here in Alaska providing care, and can you help us? Can you support us? We are happy to be part of any conversations with those clinicians. And we've participated on the state advisory boards. Hopefully your experience with us has been helpful, because that is our goal, is to be supportive and really level the playing field between families seeking care and providers trying to do a great job providing that care.
The next question, I hope I did not butcher the actual drug name, but it says, why did FDA place the 2 minimum age limit on risdiplam? Risdiplam.
Yes. So they, my understanding, well, the data that was submitted to the FDA was clinical trials that were, the youngest was 2 months of age. So they did not have that sufficient data looking at the metabolism and looking at the effects in younger infants. There is currently a trial that is in process, which is looking at risdiplam in pre-symptomatic infants. So it was incomplete data to the FDA. But it's coming, we hope. We hope it's coming.
There's another question regarding the long-term outcomes for toddlers who receive Spinraza or
Zolgensma. Yeah.
Zolgensma.
You're doing great, Jennifer. You're doing great. we've had practice. Okay, so we've, Zolgensma's been out a year. We've had practice saying these names. So
I should be able to get
names are
it
even
too.
worse.
They're not easy and they're not intuitive. So there are no head-to-head trials comparing treatments at this time. So Spinraza has been around much longer. It's been approved for almost 4 years, and the clinical trials began in 2011. So we have data, and we know that throughout the world, I think it's 10,000 patients have been treated. So there's global information. Zolgensma, so the clinical trials began, I want to say we have 5 years of information. And actually the long-term follow-up for the original 15 babies that were treated at Nationwide Children's in Columbus, Ohio, that's actually been published. And they do updates annually at the Cure SMA conference, and they're doing publications in between. So that's the longest term information that we have. Currently, there have been 600 infants around the world who have been treated with Zolgensma. So we don't, honestly, 5 years is not long enough to give you the kind of data that I believe you're looking for, or that most of us are looking for. But there is some information available, at least for the 5 years. And I'm going to blow this off the top of my head. So survival rates of for that first 15, they're all alive. And they were all symptomatic infants who were treated before, I believe, by 6 months of age. And of that group, I think 90%, I'm going to screw this up, 90% sat. And babies with SMA type 1 who are symptomatic before 6 months of age never sit. So the fact that those babies, the vast majority of those who got treated are sitting, is just, for those of us who've been around a long time, is one of those things that we're like, you never thought we'd see. So these drugs are just game changers in the world of SMA care. But we don't have any head-to-head med comparisons at this time. And there's some literature talking about what is available.
And if you didn't collect race and ethnicity, you didn't collect socioeconomic status.
So, well, not for what we're getting from the states, we don't have that information. But our research department, as part of our membership database, we actually have been making available, we call it our community survey. So every year we ask our community to complete a survey telling us, answering questions about their experience with SMA, giving us information like what you're asking about, talking about skills that they've achieved. It's actually quite lengthy. And we just completed our 4th year of that community survey. There is a publication that was done in 2018. There's another one that was just accepted, and another one that, it's going to be published soon, and then a third one that has been accepted. So there is information there. We collect the information about ethnicity directly from our community. So these are patient-reported outcomes that are provided to us. We had 1,000 people respond this year to our community survey. They were all, quarantining, or what do I want to say? They were in COVID. We were in COVID, so people were did a great job of responding to the community survey that we put out there this year. So we're collecting data a variety of ways. We have patient-reported outcomes through our research department, through the clinical care department, my department. We are collecting data through the clinicians. And within our clinician data registry, we're getting that information directly from the EMR, and we are getting the ethnicity and race information. So we hope to be able to answer some of the question about ethnicity, but I can't today.
So I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to close you out because we're almost to the end of our time. This is very good presentation, so you have a lot of questions to ask. But the last question I'm going to ask is, are states on, and I'll try to copy down some of the questions I don't get to. Maybe we can get answers from you guys and send it out to everybody. But are states or Cure SMA collecting what treatment families are choosing? What is the 20/20 ratio between the treatments?
So great question, and the answer is yes. We are collecting the treatment information, our patient-reported outcomes. We're also collecting it on our clinician-reported data. There's many more. I don't have the exact numbers, and again, there are many more individuals who are on Spinraza because it's been around much longer, and it also is available to a much larger group of individuals versus Zolgensma, which is available only to those under the age of 2. And risdiplam is so new, we don't have a sense of its uptake yet.
So I'm going to give you one more question. This is the last one, I promise.
No, it's fine. Totally fine. No, this is, thank you. I appreciate the engagement. I appreciate that people are thinking with us. This is fabulous. Thank you.
So one more question is, the understanding is there's pulmonary issues with impacted children who are on Spinraza. Has the same been seen for those who are receiving Zolgensma?
So Melissa, I'm going to ask you to clarify that question because I'm not sure what the pulmonary issues are that you are referring to for children on Spinraza.
So my understanding is that when in talking with Kathy Svoboda about this, and it's been a while, so I don't know if that's still an issue, but she said that, the Spinraza helped the skeletal muscles, but not necessarily some of the other organ system involvement in SMA, and that there were challenges in trying to figure out how to treat those other non-skeletal muscle involvement. And I'm just wondering if you're seeing the same thing with kids who get the gene therapy.
Okay. Okay. And really that has to do more with is the treatment effective for different muscle groups? I don't know if we have the answer to that. Truthfully, I would have to think about that because I don't know. So, the question too, and I have a number of clinical experiences that I'm running through my head and what both myself before I left practice and then also what we're hearing through our healthcare provider and family community. I think, the issue is that if patients are symptomatic when they receive a treatment, regardless of which treatment it is, they will have residual symptoms. And even some of the pre-symptomatic, and I can't, again, these are not cures. Pre-symptomatic infants treated with either of these are at risk to still have some symptoms because we're still learning about the impact of these therapies. I think your question has to do with do they impact the other muscle groups, or are we only seeing skeletal muscles? I've had I'm just going to give you more information to think about because I don't have the answers. But I've had physical therapists report to me that they see it's not an even distribution in the skeletal muscles either. They'll see more strength in some areas and less strength in other areas. And I think we're still trying to understand how these drugs work best or if there's any generalizations that we can make other than, we already know that the sooner you treat, the better the outcome. And you can't rescue motor neurons that have been lost. Once they're gone, they're gone. So I think to be continued. Stay posted. We're learning a lot about SMA and how these drugs work. Benefits, side effects. The other question the clinicians have is, so which therapy is going to work best for which clinical situation? And I think as a community, we need to do this work together to figure this out. It's families and healthcare providers teaming up and all of you helping to identify these babies as soon as possible so we can treat them and try to minimize the symptoms they experience. So I greatly appreciate the conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this wonderful presentation, Mary. Really appreciate it. You taking the time and presenting to this meeting. Kimberly Piper from the AP made a comment, said that the APHL New Disorders Work Group is in the final draft stages of a guide for states considering adding SMA to their NBS panel. The guide provides information about NBS information about SMA, activities to accomplish in order to add the condition, and stakeholders to involve throughout the planning, implementation, and evaluation process. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then I'm going to give the last word to Key Chan, if she can come online and just give us one more last bit of information about the Newborn Screening Summit. We'd appreciate it, and then we'll close out. So thanks everybody for joining the call this week. If you have any questions or any feedback for myself or Amy, please send us an email. We welcome feedback. And I also wanted to remind you that our next call will be, it's every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our next call is October 1st. So see you then. Thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.